absolutely beautiful. Doctor, I would love for us to shift the conversation to a few quick fire questions, another opportunity for us to get to know you a little bit better. And I would love to start off with this question. And sometimes we get a little bit confused with this particular aspect of what you do. What is the difference between sports medicine and sports science?
That's a great question. So let me try and be quick about it. So sports medicine is basically an area of healthcare that is focused on the prescription of exercise and movement, right? So we deal with injuries and illnesses in athletes or recreational elites. We deal with exercise prescription for disease prevention and management. And then obviously there's the performance aspects when we're dealing with elite athletes. So it's healthcare. Sports science is the study of physiological and functional adaptation to movement. So really it's the study of the body, how it moves, what happens at a physiological and like a cellular level, and how we can make changes to that to enhance performance.
Wow, absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for breaking that down for us, because I believe a lot of people get confused between the two. Let's move on to this question. What is the most challenging sporting code that you've worked with?
That's a terrible question to ask. And as somebody who works within sports and with different athletes, okay. But look, I think that would be an individual question as you're asking it, and probably influenced by your preferences as a practitioner, right? So what are your interests? Which codes do you enjoy participating in or watching? I won't give you a sporting code, but I will say that in terms of challenging, definitely the sporting codes that are underdeveloped are very challenging to work with. So in other words, those ones that just operationally, for instance, don't have a very well-developed structure, maybe they don't have all the policies in places, because obviously you're still, it's difficult to implement things in that setting or even get answers sometimes. But having said that, it's also the most rewarding work, right? Because when it works, and small things make a big difference.
Definitely. Well done on avoiding that question. I think you avoided it quite nicely, but I understand where you're coming from. I completely understand. Now, I would like to touch on this part of yourself. Now, you call yourself an avid athlete. Now, I would like you to choose. Would you rather choose the Comrades Marathon, Ironman, or the African X Trail Run? Which one would you choose as an avid athlete?
Can I do all of the above?
No, you have to choose. I'm not going to allow you to avoid this.
I'll be honest, both the Comrades Marathon and the Ironman are actually on my bucket list and things that I want to achieve in the next year, to be honest. But if I had to choose one over the other, as a runner, definitely Comrades Marathon, but as a clinician, the Ironman, because the Ironman encourages you have to cross train. And so it's so good for overall sort of athletic development. And so it's both. I'm going to do them both. The next time we have this conversation, you'll be saying, but you've done both of them.
Okay. No, it's okay. We'll allow you to choose, boys. But now I would like you to pick one. Okay, now you have to choose one, please. So pick one between the 2012 London Olympic Games or the 2014 Commonwealth Games that were hosted in Glasgow.
2012 London Olympic Games, definitely.
How so?
And I'll tell you why. It was the first time I was exposed to that level of platform or performance even. And when I say performance, I don't just mean in terms of athletics performance. I mean the whole operation. Listen, it was exceptional, right? And it was the first time I've seen that kind of, operation, from a clinical level, from obviously you're staging. So there's entertainment as well, that you're staging, this spectacular, thing that the world is going to view, the audience itself. So it was just electric. It was just, it was like this. I mean, I'm overplaying it here, but this African child suddenly seeing this, how amazing the possibility is, but also realizing, having worked at quite a high level of clinical medicine by that stage, that you think that overseas everything is here and we as Africans are here, and so you look up, but also realizing just in terms of clinical medicine and how we practice it from a sports medicine setting, actually we can stand shoulder to shoulder, because so for me it was because it was the first experience like that I'd ever experienced, and it really is, it's like the pinnacle of athletic performance in many ways, and just a spectacular operation when it was all put together and integrated, and it was just it revved me up in a way that I've hadn't yet experienced.
Wow, absolutely amazing. Now, I would like for you to tell us a little bit about either your favorite book or your favorite novel. I'm certain in the work that you do, you get some time to read as well.
I'm actually a very avid reader, but and I'll be another moment of honesty. Most of the things that I read are actually fictional, not fictional. So,
Wow.
so most, like, I read it for escapism, right? The same way people will go and watch Netflix series marathons. I can sit with a book for a whole day. I can read into the night, but mostly fiction. So not like groundbreaking and moving. But if you were to ask me one of my favorite sort of books that I've read, not necessarily sports, but absolutely Michelle Obama's Becoming was one that was exceptional for me, just in terms of how she outlined her journey, becoming as a woman in a place of work and professional, becoming as a woman who is a spouse to somebody who's successful, but you also aspire to success, and she's darn successful on her own, and just some of the conversations that they had to make, some of the realizations that came to by herself, and just becoming as a contributor of society. That was really special to me. Lean In by Lean In, just Sheryl Sandberg was also one that was for me. Just again, maybe this is as a woman, right, who's navigating, a journey. There's a lot that that resonated with me in her book as well, about leaning into certain situations that you're typically sort of lean away from. I've recently just read Will Smith's book.
Wow.
And that was actually my most recent book that I think I put it down last week.
You're locked onto the Sport MVT Insider, a podcast for unrelenting coverage of women in sport. Coming up this Friday, our athletes, coaches, and administrators answer the questions that you've always wondered about. If you haven't sent through your questions yet, just slide into our DMs, tell us your name, where you're from, and leave your questions, and we will make sure that we answer them. Keep it locked onto Sport MVT, where we celebrate women in sport.
And how he sees that playing out is not the vision of his family members, and how that creates sort of such disconnects and, in fact, unhappiness when all of his intention was completely pure, honest, happy, whatever else, but there was just a disconnect in checking in. Is this the same for you guys? And if it's not, how do we meet each other halfway? I mean, I'm just picking one aspect of the book that I enjoyed, but it also speaks about how he worked hard, his determination, his focus. Those are the three, I would say.
Wow, absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'd like for us to now talk a little bit about some of the phenomenal athletes that you've worked with. I'm certain that you've stood alongside and supported some incredible athletes. Who are some of the few athletes? Now, I'm not going to ask you to choose one. You might find it quite difficult, but maybe just name some of the amazing athletes that you've worked with and that you've supported, and that you were there to support them during their journey.
One athlete that I have had numerous touch points on that stands out is Michaela Whitebooi. She is a judo athlete, South African judo athlete, who's got a number of African titles and made her debut at the Olympics in Tokyo. Like I said, I've had various touch points with her, but I can't claim to be her main physician. She's an incredibly humble human being. If I think about her beginnings and where she is right now, the amount of work, and I started working with her around 2010 when I was at the High Performance Center at the University of Pretoria. And if I just reflect on her journey as a young individual who was passionate about the sport, who used the sport to just leverage her life, who has remained humble throughout her journey, who is committed to giving back, who is finished a qualification and a degree even, and is now working while she's still doing this. This for me just epitomizes what sport can do to transform an individual's journey, and how an individual can also use sports to transform their immediate communities and environments. And so it's a privilege to be able to walk a bit of her journey with her and have so many touch points with her, the most being as recent as last year. The other athlete that I think about, and this one I actually have never worked with, but we have had many conversations, is Bongi Msomi, the Proteas netball captain. Again, just another incredible being and an example of tenacity and determination, right? Because if you think about how she literally fell into netball, right? I don't know how much the story, how she just fell into netball because she was super subbing and standing at the side of a court, and then also realized just how transformative and what potential and how she could use this to completely change her trajectory, and then proceeded to do this in such a short period of time. And now, again, just for me, I think what always resonates for me is when an athlete achieves personal success, but when they use that success to leverage, to lift others, and bring them with me. And that always stands out for me. And then let me just think about athletes who I have had, a direct influence of, And then this would probably in the rugby circles where I've worked closest with the athletes, even at the High Performance Center. I've had the privilege of working with a lot of the younger Banyana athletes when they were still at the High Performance Center. And if I, again, like just thinking about that, the ability to be able to walk a journey with athletes. And for me, it usually is when they're younger, it's the most meaningful because, individuals when they're younger obviously are more receptive to ideas, a different way of doing things. Being able to have informed some of the way in which they go about their clinical decision-making. So in other words, how they engage with their injuries and illnesses, how they do recovery, but also usually the conversations I have with athletes go beyond just the clinical problem that they're there for. We talk about life, and so if I think about some of the rugby players who I'm still in contact with today, and some of those, again, Banyana is not Banyana, then they were, they were the under 17s, but who are at the High Performance Center, who I'm still in contact with today. And the small impacts that I've made in their journey, that is extremely rewarding for me.
Oh, absolutely beautiful.